In this video, I'm going to go through the top 5 most common questions that Wetherspoons ask in their interviews, and I'm going to show you how you can answer these questions so that you're going to be confident on the most common questions. Let's start with one that is extremely important, and that is, what times can you work at Wetherspoons? And they're going to be very, very interested in your answer. And if you answer this badly, you're probably not going to get the job, because they are looking for certain times and certain types of people. And if you answer badly, it's not going to show that. So the way you answer this is, firstly, you want to try and say yes. The more you can say yes to any times that they're asking about, the more likely you are going to be successful. Because if you say you can't work at the times they're actually looking for, they're going to hire someone that can work at those times. So saying no is going to really hurt you. So try and avoid it. Try and always talk about the times that you can do. The next thing is, you want to try and keep an open mind. Be open to as many times as possible. In your answer, you want to show as much flexibility as you can. And fundamentally, what you want to do is show that you're serious about your job. The worst way to answer this question is to say, I can't work at this time, I can't work at this time, I can't work at this time, and then say that you can work all the other times, basically giving a list of all the times you can't do. That's the wrong way to answer it. It's very negative, and it makes them think that you've got so many other things you'd rather be doing, and you don't take your job very seriously. On the flip side, the best answers have various phrases that can be used, and I would pick the ones that match what your availability is and try and use as many as possible. So the first thing is, you can say that you can work the advertised hours. So if the job advert said times on there, then you can say that you can work those specific times. If it didn't, we can say some more general things. So you could say, I can usually work anytime the pub is open. So if you're very, very flexible and you don't have anything stopping you working certain days, for example, if you got another job and this is the second job, then you could use that phrase. You could say, I can usually work anytime the pub is open. And that's like almost the perfect answer. You want to try and say as many of these times as possible. So you could say that I'm open to evening, afternoon, breakfast, or morning shifts. And that shows a bit of knowledge about the company. This is a pub, but strangely for a pub, it offers breakfast and is open all morning and all afternoon. So you could also show a bit of knowledge by saying that. Then you may want to say that you can work at short notice when needed. You might not be needed to work at short notice, but saying that in the interview is a good thing. And then lastly, you could say that you're open to extra hours when needed. There may be extra hours available, there may not be extra hours available, but showing a willingness to work more hours is a positive thing. And of course, you'll be paid more to do it. So you may actually be interested in that. So that's how you answer this question. The next one that they always ask, and it's very, very, very common in Wetherspoons interviews to get this one, is, what do you know about Wetherspoons? And if you go to an interview and you don't know very much about the company, don't expect to get the job. Without having done some research, you're going to look very bad. And I'm going to help you do this research and show you the key facts that you could talk about to get through this question. And the way to be successful is to start in the middle of that diagram and move outwards. So you start with the really obvious facts, the thing everybody knows about Wetherspoons. Then show that you've bothered to do some research, so you know a bit more than someone who just is a customer, that you actually have done something to know a bit more. And then to really show off, you ought to drop a few great facts that only people that really did some research would know. And the good news for you is, I'm going to actually take you through all of this and give you a summary, so you could screenshot this page once I put everything up, and then that will help you do your research. So let's start with the really obvious things that you always start an answer with. So it's fundamentally a pub chain. Wetherspoons owns loads of pubs. Just say that. That's the basics. They also own hotels. You might be applying to a Wetherspoons that's got a hotel. Yours one might not have a hotel, but some of them do, and make sure you know which is which. It runs primarily on a standardized menu. So if you go from one Wetherspoons to another one, and travel up and down the country visiting Wetherspoons, you won't see an enormous difference. They work off a very standard menu, so they all look the same. So if you've been to one Wetherspoons and you're going to another, it's much the same. And that's one way of keeping the costs down and letting customers know that wherever they go to a Wetherspoons, they're getting roughly the same thing. And that's a big part of their business. They're also big on real ale, and they support a lot of breweries, smaller brewers, with having guest ales and different ales in from smaller breweries and local ales. That's a big thing that they're passionate about. They have a breakfast offering. Unlike many pubs, they are open during breakfast, and a lot of people do come in to get their breakfast. They have a lot of meal deals, so have a look at the menu at your Wetherspoons and what is the offer on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and so on. They have like fish club and curry club and that sort of thing. So they have themed days, and you want to be aware of what they are, and you can see that on their website very easily. They're quite famous for having some quite unusual locations. So some Wetherspoons may be in converted cinemas or banks that have been turned into a restaurant and a Wetherspoon. So that's a bit different. You've also got quite unique carpets, and there has actually even been a book that's been written about Wetherspoons carpets, and they spend more money on the carpets than you would think. A lot of them are made by Axminster, and they are unique to each pub. That's a nice fact. It is, as a company, fairly politically active. You could just use the phrase politically active. They have a news magazine that's often got a lot of political views and the news and goings on at Wetherspoons, and that's put on the tables. The company was founded by Tim Martin. I would make sure you're aware of that name, because sometimes they ask who is Tim Martin in interviews. I've heard of that come up. He founded the company all the way back in 1979. At the very beginning, he called it Martin's Free House, but then he moved on and started calling it Wetherspoons. And a fascinating fact about the company is where the name Wetherspoons comes from. It's actually named after a teacher. And you may think this is lovely. Oh, he named it after his favourite teacher. It's not quite. It's a bit cleverer than that. Mr. Wetherspoon actually told Tim Martin they would never amount to anything, and basically implied that he'd be a failure in life. So he named his billion-pound pub empire after that teacher that told him he'd never go anywhere. So that's quite a nice fact, that Wetherspoons actually comes from the name of a teacher. You could also mention that the company is now on the London Stock Exchange, which gives you an idea of just how big the business is. And my other top tip, if you want to really show off some brilliant knowledge and really impress them, is just read the JD Wetherspoons PLC annual report. Just type that phrase into Google and it'll bring up a report that will tell you everything about the company and more than you'd ever imagined ever needing to know. You'll get the chairman's letter and all sorts of great information to read, and definitely make sure you know your pub. So look on the website about that pub. You might find a bit of the history. What was the pub before it was owned by Wetherspoons? And know all you can about that pub, because they may ask about it. And it's good to know the specific knowledge about that location, and you can show off that knowledge. So that's how you get through this. Feel free to take any notes from this, or if you want, just screenshot this whole page, and that will help you be well prepared for this question. So let's now move on to another question. What would you do if a customer complained about the food? And I've heard Wetherspoons ask this question in many interviews, because it's something that happens when you're working in a pub restaurant environment. It's going to happen. And it's not difficult to answer. I'm just going to give you a few things to remember and just talk through each of these, and you'll get through this question no problem. So first thing you say is you take them seriously. If a customer's complaining about the food, you're going to listen to what they have to say, and you're not going to be going across there and they're complaining and looking at them like, what's wrong with you? It's fine. That's not the right thing to say. You just take their complaint seriously. You apologize sincerely. So obviously they're not happy about it. Something may have went wrong. Something might not be done perfectly, or they may have asked for a specific request. So for example, they don't want cheese on their burger and they've got a burger with cheese on it. So you're going to apologize for that. You want to gather information and assess. So you don't want to take it back to the kitchen and say they've complained about it. And then the kitchen says, well, what's wrong with it? And you don't know. So make sure that you actually know exactly what the problem is. And before you leave that customer, you know exactly what they're not happy about and exactly what they want done and exactly how to solve the problem. And then you just say you're going to find the solution. So you know exactly what the customer is complaining about. So when you go back to the kitchen, you can clearly communicate exactly what needs to be fixed to make the customer happy. And that's the way that you do it. And the last thing you may want to mention is that you want to learn from it. If something has went wrong, you want to understand what it was and then learn from that. So as a location in Wetherspoons, that you can improve that and make sure that sort of thing doesn't happen again. And it may be that you made a mistake which caused this problem with the food, and you would learn from that, and then you would not repeat that. So this is how you go through the question. Just basically talk about taking them seriously, apologizing sincerely, getting the information, finding the solution, and then learning something from that that you can use in future. And that's how you fly through this question. Let's look at question 4. Why do you want to work here? And this is one that you don't want to make up on the day. If they ask you why you want to work for Wetherspoons and you give, a one-sentence answer that's quite unconvincing, it's not a great answer. This one's a really important one to plan. So I'm going to show you the sort of things you might want to talk about, and I would strongly recommend that you have a plan ready to go. So the first thing I would think about when you're planning your answer is, what would you enjoy about working in Wetherspoons? Have you worked in pubs before? Is that something you think you would enjoy? Do you like interacting with lots of people? Do you like working in a pub atmosphere? Do you like always being busy and having lots of different jobs to do? That's some things you can think about. Think about, why does this job match your skills? So if you worked in pubs before successfully, talk about that. If you're really friendly, outgoing, if you've got great customer service skills, you can say that. So I want to work here because I'm really good at this job and I've got all the skills that you require. And that's a good reason for wanting to work somewhere. You want to work somewhere where you're going to be good at your job. So show that your skills match. And you can also convince them that you're a good hire in this question as well. The next thing is, if you are ambitious, you may want to think about, how could you develop your career here? It may be that, like many people, you're just working at Wetherspoons as a first job, or you're not intending to stay there for many years. If you, however, want to have a long-term career in hospitality, you may want to talk about that and what Wetherspoons can do in the training programs, and the fact that lots of people in the company who are really good at their job can be promoted, and there is opportunities within the business, because you're not applying to one pub that's owned by one person. So the person who owns it is always going to be in charge. Wetherspoons not like that. Big multinational chain of hundreds and hundreds of pubs where there may be opportunities for you. And whatever you do, be enthusiastic. Show that you actually take this job really seriously and that you're really interested in getting this. Some inspirational things you might want to say is just simply that you love working in a pub. If you've got experience, say why you've loved that from your experience. Or if you're just imagining this as your first job, say about your experience in being in pubs and why you think that you would like to work in one. You could talk about a high rate of internal promotion. So when you look at the management, a lot of management in Wetherspoons have worked their way up to get that. So that's internal promotion you could talk about. If you know someone who has worked at Wetherspoons and they've got good things to say about the company, you could talk about that. You don't need to name them in the interview, but if someone has said to you, there's a job going in Wetherspoons, you should apply for it, you'll like it, and then they talk positively, you could say something about that. If you have some good experience as a customer, if you've been coming to Wetherspoons for a while and you like it, you could mention that as well. And if you're quite interested in being trained up, so if you're starting on an apprentice role, or you're new to this, or you're looking to advance, you may talk about the fact they provide an excellent training program. Look up Wetherspoons training programs and look at the one that best matches you, and say that you're really interested in pursuing this training program. And that could also be a good answer. The next question I've heard Wetherspoons ask a few times is, how would you deal with a rude customer? And just like the question about complaining about the food, there is a simple process that you can follow. And I'm going to say some things that you could say in your interview to show that you know how to deal with it. And remember, you're not giving what your instant thought is, how you might want to deal with it in your own head, but you're answering it in the way that they would like you to answer, in a way that's going to score well and is going to be reassuring to them. So the first thing they want to be reassured of is that you'll avoid provocation. So you're not going to upset the customer more. If the customer's a little bit rude to you, makes a rude comment, it's going to happen. It happens all the time in pubs. It's not acceptable, but it's something that's going to happen. And if you instantly get into an argument with the customer and challenge them about it and have a go at them, then it's not going to go well. So you want to avoid any provocation and always stay calm. So you're going to be clear in the interview that you don't shout at them, you don't argue back, you're not rude back. These are the wrong things to do, and they would be very upset if you said them and would perhaps not even employ you. Then you want to say you're going to try and hold back your emotions. It's not nice when a customer is rude to you. It's awful, but it's something that unfortunately happens in pubs. And so you ought to say you hold back your emotions. You're probably annoyed about it, but with experience, you do get over it pretty quickly. It's part of the job. It sucks. It's awful, but it just does happen. Then you want to de-escalate. So if the customer's being really rude and is quite upset and they're complaining, they're really annoyed, you want to de-escalate that. You want to show that you're listening to the customer. You want to use a quiet voice. You want to be very receptive to what they have to say. And it's amazing when a customer is really angry, but they get the idea that someone is finally actually listening to their complaint and taking them seriously, how it can calm the situation down. Though, of course, if it's outrageous and unreasonable, then you consider the safety and that you want to keep everyone in the pub safe. And there's a limit to what a customer can do. They can't behave completely unreasonably, because if it becomes unsafe, then they will have to leave. Then if there's a problem, fix it. If the customer's being rude because there's something wrong with their meal, there's something wrong with their drink, there's something gone wrong with their experience there, if you can fix that, then you're making the problem go away. So you can also say that. And then another just general bit of advice, and something that you'll say, is don't take it personally. If you've worked in pubs before, you know that people do make rude comments, and they do sometimes not conduct themselves in the best way, especially when they've had too much to drink. And you learn with experience to just get over it quickly, that you just almost ignore it in your head and just get on with your job. It's unfortunate, but if you don't take things personally, it makes your life a lot easier and you'll enjoy your job a lot more. So that is how you answer this question. So you staying calm, holding back your emotions, de-escalating the situation. Any problems that's causing the customer to be rude, you try and solve those, and you don't take rudeness personally. And if you say that, that's going to be quite a reassuring answer to them. Remember, you're saying what you need to say to score well and show them that you actually know how to deal with this. Before we finish, as a bonus, here's some good questions that you could ask them at the end of your interview. So you might ask them, what's the next steps in the Wetherspoons recruitment process? One, you probably want to know. And two, it shows that you're actually really interested in the job, that you want to know, when do I find out if I've got it? And you really care about that. You might want to ask about the team that they have here, show an interest in your colleagues and learning about them. You could ask, what's your favorite thing about working in Wetherspoons? And if they say something really positive, you can talk about how you would really enjoy that. And that's one thing that's quite motivating to you. You want to join Wetherspoons because you think the thing that they think is brilliant is also brilliant. You could ask them about the new training that's available. So if you join, what staff training is going to be available, and show a real interest in that. You could also ask, is there anything I could do to be well prepared for starting if I am successful? Make sure you get the if I am successful in there. And if they say, well, we'd like you to make sure you learn the menu, commit to doing that. Say that I'll do my best to learn the menu before I start. Because someone who makes that commitment looks a lot better than someone that doesn't. Because they're thinking, well, if we hire you, we're going to get someone who's better prepared. You're going to need less training, and that's a real positive. And then the last one is try and make one question up on the day. So if they say something in the interview you wonder about, then you might just make one up. Make sure you check it's appropriate before you ask it. But if you think about anything, do just ask a good, spontaneous question at the end. And then lastly, never ask about holidays or pay during your interview. If you ask about how many holidays do I get, or you talk about the fact that you want to have a holiday in 3 weeks' time, that could be enough to just blow the whole interview. Never, ever ask about holidays, and don't negotiate pay in your interview. If they decide to offer you the job and you feel that you've got some leeway on pay and you may have a chance to negotiate, which for many roles you won't, but for more senior roles you might have an ability to negotiate and maybe a salary range. But don't do that during your interview. That is for after your interview, once they've decided they want to hire you. So never ask about pay. You should know that before you go to your interview. So I hope this was helpful. If it was, please like and subscribe below, and post in the comments what questions Wetherspoons asked you, so everyone else can see the sort of questions that come up, and that would be really helpful if you could do that. And finally, thank you very much for watching.